Well, it's 10:02, so it doesn't seem to be as many people here as it was last time. If they think they're going to see the same thing, they're not. So I'm going to give people just any more coming up the hall there, Aaron? No?
No.
Well, heck, let's get started, right?
All right.
Y'all paid your admission? Excellent. Well, good morning. Thanks for being here. We're all here for pretty much one reason, I think. We like trains?
Yeah.
Audience participation, that's great. Well, then you and I are both in the same place, right? Again, I want to thank you all for being here, number one. These live experiences do change lives. And the things that you learn and pick up at events like these, the information that you can garnish from people like myself and Mike that are doing presentations today, is going to help you have a greater experience in toy trains, and that's an exciting thing. Again, thank you for being here, and thanks from the LCCA as well. I know some of you, or many of you, are part of that organization. One of the things we want to do is obviously promote the love and joy of toy trains, and especially Lionel trains. I did put the plug in, right? You heard, Mike, right? Okay.
I heard it. Well,
excellent. Very good.
Nicely done.
Very good. Very good. Well, my first toy train was a Lionel train. When it became an electric train, I had wind-up marks before that. But I've been enjoying trains, collecting trains now since 1957 is when I got my first. And so I've had a little bit of experience with them. In terms of the layout building, which is what you're all here and interested in, I've been, basically my mom said the first time I got some construction paper and some glue, which is when I was very tiny, I started putting together little houses and buildings and tunnels and different elements that would enhance my toy train experience. So I've been doing it for a very long time. How many people have a train layout? Wow, it's most of you. How many people have done more than one train layout? Excellent. 5 train layouts? Excellent. How about 10? All right, we're keep going here. Okay, well, I'm going to jump ahead. How about 100? Okay, I'm ahead of you. I've been building train layouts, like I said, for a very long time. Professionally, it's been now 12 years of solidly having it as part of our business. Actually, we're close to 14, almost 15 years now in terms of building them for people other than Lionel or the other guys that we've done displays for and train layouts. So I have a little bit of information compiled there. One of the things I love to do is share that information. I want to make your experience with toy trains an enhancement of your enjoyment of toy trains. So I'm going to this time give you the whole experience, how I approach building a layout. So in terms of scenery techniques, we're going to have plenty of those, but I want you to understand how important it is to start at the beginning with your layout, how to build it to enhance your experience and also make it more flexible in terms of one thing we're all faced with all the time is change. That's reality. So when you think about building a permanent layout, think about what might happen, okay, how it might have to change. And that's part of what I'm going to share with you today. All right, well, I'm going to start at the beginning with a project that we did, just recently completed, for a gentleman in Houston, Texas. His passion is the S&P, Southern Pacific. He has spent his life collecting toy trains as well, a good portion of it. And the Southern Pacific was his focus. In Texas, there is the Pecos River High Bridge. And this bridge was built in 1943, which those of you who have a little bit of history background, that was in the middle of the war. And building railroad bridges was not a priority during the war, except for this one. This was basically the South Transcontinental Railroad. This was the passage. And when the original bridge was built in 1893, 94, it stood on those piers. Let's see where I got this. Those little piers right there. And they are still there. That's where it went through. And the structure was, by 1943, was pretty rickety. And the U.S. government decided that this was a critical bridge because the northern transcontinental railroad would get snowed in during winter times. In 1943, the trains would have to come to a complete stop before they got onto that old bridge and could only proceed at 5 miles an hour. Okay, so you can imagine what a bottleneck that was at that point. They decided to build a new bridge, and it's still there today. The owner of the layout said this was going to be the centerpiece. He wanted that bridge to be 13 feet long, and it's 3 feet high, 1 to 3 feet off of the floor from the riverbed. And the rest of the layout would be built around it. The basic shape of it was based on the 1948-49 Lionel display, the showroom display. So you had 30 feet, 14 feet, multiples of track, 2 mains on the outside, the storage and station on one end, mountains in the center, smaller bridges crossing the, connecting the different parts, a rail yard and some storage track, essentially 4 loops of track that were on it. But again, this was the centerpiece, and let's go from there. Next one. This is a color shot. The reason I'm including the color shot is to give you an idea of the coloration of the rocks. When we're approaching a design for any layout, and the client is expressing his interest, just like you have interest in specific places, you want to have resource, and we work from resource material. So we want to capture the essence of and the quality of things like rocks and the landscape and what kind of brush is along the river, on top of the mesa that it connects, the aging, the weathering, all those elements that really give an identity and a very realistic look to the finish of the layouts. This is another shot to just show you the kind of terrain. Again, the color, how the river, when it gets flooded, it covers the brush along the riverbed. An older, well, this is a close-up on the water itself, and seeing the brush, how it climbs up, the smaller rock that exists along the water, the talus, if you will, the small rock that breaks off from the cliffs. The water actually rises in this river all the way up into here. So this is about 25, 30 feet. And in the spring especially, in the runoffs, you can have major push through in terms of the trees get washed away, literally tore up. Another area that he wanted replicated on the layout was the Big Bend area. This is Texas. If you know Texas at all, there's a lot of mesas in the southwest, a lot of open territory, a lot of open ground, and the colors are very rich, pretty exciting. Again, more of the, oops, not too far there. Back up a little. There we go. You can see this darker coloration, but it really shows you the stratification, the type of the talus as it builds up. You know, at one time this was just sheer peaks all the way through here, but over time it all eroded. This is another element of train layouts, and actually modeling is how do you model time? You know, include time in your, that's the fourth dimension, is how do you include time on your layouts? Well, you can have all sharp cliffs and buttes that depict one era, but then later you have other areas where you have the big off-falls like this. You can do the same thing in terms of your roadbed. You know, the roadbed is refreshed every so many years on the railroad. You'll see residual off-fall from the old ballast. You'll see the new ballast is a little bit higher. The roadbed has changed a little bit. Those are things that reflect the passage of time. It's something that you can work at to include on your layout so that, again, you bring it up to another level in terms of your presentation. This rock work depicted here is more of the color that he wanted on the whole layout, throughout the layout. He was not in favor of all the rich browns as much as the grays. This is another shot of the river, and you can see this water has receded extremely far. These pillars are no longer in the water, and you can see the sandy bank that's created from the flow. This is where you get the rushing water around the curve here, and the buildup comes on the inside of the curve where the sandbars tend to build up. This is actually from a postcard, so it's, I apologize for the quality of the photograph, but again, we look at research to support what we're going to do. Here you can see where the river has actually tore off all the branches when it's gotten to a higher level. This is all actually flotsam. This is all driftwood pushed up against the bank during the high water period. You can see where water, which usually the ground is way out here. And there's a lot of water there, and you're getting a lot of runoff pushing the flotsam down on the river along the banks. This is a photograph of the old bridge, and this is the Prosperity Special that when Baldwin, the S&P put in an order for 50 locomotives. And this is in 1922. And they decided that they were going to do a little promotional tour. And they set all 50 of the engines heading west towards California. And they put banners on the sides of the trains that say Prosperity Special. And they were going to do it just through New York, Pennsylvania, and then hand it off. Basically just let the engines go on their own. They had so much reaction, the public literally lined the sides of the railroad, that they decided to take them all the way to the West Coast, all 50 of them at one time. And somebody caught that moment crossing the bridge. And you can see how rickety, and of course back then it probably wasn't as bad as it became by 1940, but it was very long, all steel, and these engines display just how stout that was. Nevertheless, by the 1940s it became almost impassable. You had to slow down the engines quite a lot. All right. This is Wharton, Texas. This is a SP station. The city of Wharton had a real strong group of citizens who decided that we need to save the station. SP had pulled the lines years ago. It was standing there getting ready to self-destruct, if you will. It was falling down. But they got an architect in. He found all the original drawings. They restored the station to its original beauty. And the architect for this structure, the renovation, is the same architect that the client hired to redesign his home, to build a train room. And I worked with the architect in the development of the train room, so I was in on this whole project very early. And the owner of the house wanted to include, again, a S&P relic in his display, in his layout. So we had all the drawings, we got all the color specifications, and in an agreement with the city of Wharton, we were allowed to reproduce it. So it's one of the items that we have in our store, TrainWorx store. But a portion of each sale goes to the museum, to the foundation that restored this station. That's my plug for the day. It is available on our website.
When you reproduced it, did you reproduce it in plastic or?
Oh no, this is all hand done. It's done in medium density fiberboard, all laser cut. It's completely electrified, so it has all of these hanging lamps on it. It's a very nice piece.
Train's coming.
Train's coming. And actually the trains are coming again because Norfolk Southern decided to service this area, and they put the lines back. So it's pretty amazing. This is the house under renovation. This is me. This is the client. Early on in development, they had to change the way you got upstairs into the room. So the real easy way that they originally had became an impossible route for bringing the layout in unless we made it into pieces smaller than this. The stairway had 2 right turns up. There was an elevator in the middle. Talk about planning, right? He knows that in a few years that may be his only way to get up to his train room. So he put an elevator into the house as well. But the only way that we could get the layout up into the train room was through the ceiling, into the floor of the train room. So the entire layout that you're about to see was designed to fit through a 6-foot by 30-inch space. So we literally went from the garage up into the train room, and then, yeah. But that's where planning comes into it. The whole picture here. And what I'm trying to reinforce with all of you is that thinking ahead, planning ahead, makes it possible for you to enjoy the railroad of your dreams and be ready for when things change. They can all come apart again, they can all go out this hole, but it's something that we work with our clients in terms of making it so that there's a future for your layout. This is as the shell was going up, and you can see where we are standing on the floor. These are air ducts. These are your power feeds into the layout. This is where the bridge is going to span. This is a 13-foot across here. Other vents, return vents, and that is the hole in the floor back there, covered with a sheet of plywood. Essentially what we did is bring everything up through that hole, move it to this end of the room, and start assembling it. And as we assembled it, we end up here, covered that with the last pieces put up here, and it's all together. Again, a different view from the opposite end. Important to know where your power sources are, obviously. We have the advantage here, we're doing it from scratch, but still, it's a challenge.
How big is the whole area?
The entire room is 40 feet long, and this is 20 feet, is it 14? No, it's 22 feet
20.
from side to side here.
Thank you.
Ideally, sorry to...
No, it's okay.
Question. Ideally, at this point, in Indiana, I'm thinking about moisture, I'm thinking about temperature. He probably didn't have that problem.
Oh, sure.
Texas.
In Houston? Yeah, Houston's right on the coast. Well, not right on the coast, but we're 50 miles from the coast. It's right on the Gulf, and you talk about humid.
Does he do anything to keep the moisture?
All of the, this room has its own, this room has its own air cooling, heating. And again, this was important that we included vents in the design. So we're circulating air through the entire room, even underneath the table, so we can keep that air quality at the level
So
we
the air
want.
conditioning, the condenser is going to take the moisture
Yeah,
out.
it takes the moisture out. And on the filtering, we use the same kind of filtering that they have in a hospital. So we're taking particulate matter out of the equation altogether. Dust, keeping dust to a minimum so that you're not having to clean all the time.
Was that a garage?
It's over a garage, yeah.
Below that, and that's unusual because usually if people think of going down to the basement, he's going up.
No, there's no basements well, there's very few basements in Texas, especially in the Houston, Dallas.
Because the water
Long.
table's so high.
The ground is so heavy with clay that you get a lot of shifting. Oh yeah, it gets so dry in the summer, and then you get real moist in the winter, so you have this huge expansion of the soil.
You know, crack
So
concrete.
it'll crack concrete. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kenzie?
In fact, the whole floor was reinforced. The garage floor, they literally cut holes in the floor and reinforced the footings underneath to stabilize it. They were concerned about that.
Does he have access from the house, or is that?
Yes, yeah, there is access from the house, and that was, again, part of our problem in terms of getting up to this room, was it was a very tight stairway. So this layout, like I said, is 30 feet long and 14 feet wide, and you'll see parts of the structure as to, it was quite a challenge. Again, we would have had to make it into much smaller pieces. Again, between the two pictures, the two photos, that's your finished room before we started moving in. Very similar shot, so you get an idea of what we're dealing with.
What's your total budget?
I'm not allowed to say.
Okay. Is it over 10,000?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can say it was in excess of $100,000 for the layout. Yeah. But
It's tax
wait till you see.
deductible, don't worry about it.
Which I have already been told by people who know that we probably charged them too little. Yeah. But again, you can see the floor pockets, the ventilation, both under the table and outside. This is where the trapdoor is. You can just barely see the line of its shape. And the lighting system. This is all LED lighting, so it's a very low heat, and this is a double powered system. Yep.
I see it's hardwood and the walls are solid. Were we ever concerned of sound bouncing all over, a noise?
This is an isolated room from the house.
Okay.
There is some carry down into the, there's like a TV room under this end of the room where the stairway is. But he's single, lives alone. He wasn't worried about that. But it's the house is. We were in a rainstorm when we were doing the installation. I had to open the blinds when somebody said to me, "Man, it's pouring outside." I literally had to open the shades to see because you couldn't hear a thing inside that house. It's hard to see, but if, when I back up, you can. It has a cathedral type ceiling. Okay, that's all steel beams. It was built to withstand Category 5 hurricane. This is, you can see that it's all clad. There's steel beams here, which made it a real challenge in terms of lighting. So we put pediment mounts through here, and then we added a pediment and added a track or grid, if you will. Because on top of this, we actually added on the top side LED, RGB, so we can do color change throughout the room.
Okay.
So, and you'll see some of that as I progress. Let's move a little quicker here for you. This is the layout, the table under construction. One of the things that I want to point out is the modularity of it, and it's something that you should consider even in your permanent layouts, is that you have sections, either 4x8, 4x6, whatever you necessarily have to do. But one of the things we do different, I haven't seen too many other people do, you can see these are mouse holes. Here, here, here. Okay? The advantage of this, as opposed to drilling a hole through the middle of it, is you never have to drop your wires off the surface, underside of the table. It's a lot cleaner when you get underneath that table in terms of your electrics. Everything is on one plane under the entire table. No drop down. You're never going to have a problem of bumping into, catching wires that are looping down underneath sections of your table, from area to area. And again, you keep it flat against the surface. You also, when you drill holes through this material, any material, I don't care what you use, you weaken that material. When you do a notch like this, the integrity of the board is a lot higher than taking holes, especially multiples of holes, through that piece. I have a question.
And then on leads, can you just take straight solder and then staple that up and it's separate? Or and then you can hook up at any point?
Yes, well, a lot of people will run a bus over the entire bottom of it. What we do is we create hearts, what we call a heart. And essentially, it's however many bus lines that we need, 6, 8, 10, doesn't matter. We just do a run of about 18 to 24 inches, again, depending on how many and how much table it needs to distribute to. And we run everything else to that point. So we're only dealing with a small area of expensive, coated, exposed wire to get our electrical leads from, or to. But again, something to think about when you're building, to keep your wiring neat, keep your integrity of your tables strong. You can see this is very minimal in terms of framing that's used. And again, you'll see very shortly, I work on top of these tables. This will support 270 pounds. Oh, I told you that. Ooh. But
So,
seriously.
Framing underneath, is that wood or metal?
The framing here is a temporary framing that we use as sawhorses. It's a metal sawhorse that gives us the most access to the underside when we're doing the wiring. The permanent structure is actually wood as well. And here I'm indicating how we put the foam. After we put the plywood tops on, we foam cover it. A lot of people do an open grid. Okay. Problem with an open grid is when you need to get up on top of the table to work on it, you can go right through that table. And I'm sorry, you can say all day long, well, I'm not going to make it big enough to have to get up there. You'll find a reason that you're going to need to get up there at some point. Plan ahead, spend a little bit more money, and cover the entire top. And you sound deaden the entire surface. Okay? The foam in place, the pieces in place, and you can see where our valley is for our bridge, this valley in here. Access, these are access holes that'll come up through the center of mountain scenery. Our turntable here, servicing a yard that's not in place yet. But at this point, we have the basic table, and we lay out all the track to make sure that our track plan is going to work, and then we'll elevate up from that. Putting in a temporary span for the bridge, not at the finished height, but again, for us to be able to work the track plan and make sure that that's going to serve our purposes. Some of the preliminary drawings, in this one there's a roundhouse that was later taken out, and we put in a garden track, and I'll show you what that is in a little bit here. This is the framing for the base. So it's wood. You can see where we've trestled it. All right, we've created a truss beam, and that's why we can support as much weight as we do with a minimal amount of space that's encumbered with trusses, supports. I know a lot of you have probably seen modular systems that you can buy. Just a heads up, you're going to end up with lots of legs to walk through, to crawl through. Consider building your own, keeping it very open so that you have access throughout. You can see where there's open areas here. These are the doors to get into underneath the table to work on once it's completed. This is again that valley area here. This end just isn't completed yet, but again, these are all works in progress. We fire retard everything. When layout goes out of our building, there is fire retardant on every piece of wood, so there's no exposed wood anywhere. Again, plan ahead, think ahead. Where do most fires in layouts occur? It's in the electrical wiring, and that's usually on the underside of the table that isn't too accessible. So we fireproof everything. This is shown with the fireproofing, and now it's being assembled. You can see where there's clear areas here. There's no wood on the floor. We can put a creeper and roll all the way around underneath the table. Makes it very easy to work on. Again, back into the process. You can stand anywhere on this layout, including in the riverbed. Working on the turntable. Now, elevating. Here we're using what is basically open frame type technology, if you will, to elevate our track. We go through this process. It's all open, very easy to change our grade by just changing the height of our supports. But this now literally puts the whole track plan out where we can see it and actually operate trains on it. As often as we can, as soon as we can, we start running trains on the layout to make sure that the choices we've made, the clearances that we've included, will allow the trains to get through that. It looks like a lot of space, but when that's an 072 curve. When you're running a big boy on that, that's less than a quarter of an inch clearance. It looks like a lot of space. It's just enough for a big boy to get through there. As you can see, we're adding the plywood decks to things. Then we put in foam. This is how we create all our mountainscapes. We use a urethane foam. This is a Trimer 2000, and I'll be more than happy to supply you with the information on this, so you, if you want to try this for yourself. We actually had a mountain carving class last year. We're going to have another one this year. It's a 2-day event. It's my time with you and 6 other people, or 6 other people. We limit the size of the class so you get hands-on, one-on-one instruction. But again, this is urethane foam that's put in around the basic framing, and then it's again referring to our resources. These are the rock formations and style of rock that he wants. Again, lots of open spaces. It's Texas after all. He's a very minimalist in terms of the style. You saw the white room. He doesn't call it a train room, he calls it a train gallery. And it is. You'll see the finished pictures here. Our good friend George, who's been with us for going on almost 14 years. Again, the process of putting in foam blocks. A lot of what you see on the top, that's not the finish. I mean, this is where we're blocking things in. And these pieces are just thrown up there as we're working so that we fill in little corners and crevices as we're working. Now you can see the carving starting to take shape. That plateau that we saw in those photographs earlier, the mesas, you can see where the idea of the young rock, the older rock fall, the piece literally broke away from this piece here, creating that imagery that's going to support the look he's looking for. The canyon going into place. When I said you can walk anywhere, to service all of the interior space of this, you literally can walk on water. This is the stream bed that's cut out. This is just plywood. And that plywood is worked up in layers to the point of what we call mud or goop. It's a sealer that seals all of this foam surface, and we create the current and then paint it. But you can literally walk on that surface to take care of cleaning, vacuuming. If you need to get to the center of the bridge to re-rail a train, if that happens, and so far that hasn't, so all good stuff there. Again, showing you how we stack the foam and then carve the foam. This is a secondary bridge that was put in to complete the loops of track around the perimeter. That's not really there in terms of the Pecos River, and that's a temporary support. But it's an open grid so that there wasn't a real harsh, heavy shadow, and as visually when you're looking at it, you can see through the track and the truss plate there. That's an aluminum truss plate. Again, all the choices here in terms of the wood that we're using, the framing that we're using, it's all lightweight. It's all tended to be very movable, very flexible, so that we can move in and out in terms of our installation. This is further down in the process chain. We've put tape over all the tracks, so we're gooping, actually putting this sealer over the rock surface. This is while it's still wet, I believe. But you can see how the carving is being covered with this surfacing material that stays flexible, so that you, unlike a plaster or hard scape, metal screen, this is a relatively pliable. You run an engine into that, it may tear the surface, but it's not going to destroy your engine, which is a big plus. Again, you can stand. It's actually something that we mix, but I can give you the formula, and the base for it is a scenic material that's used in the theater business, and it's made by Roscoe. Again, we run trains on it often, and check out again our clearances and things like that. Here we're working through a sample. The client's going to come and visit and see the progress and give us sign-offs on how it looks. So we have a section of it that's painted, a little bit of the landscaping that we're putting in. And if you remember back the pictures, in terms of the coloration, the creams and different looks there, and again, we'll see more finish. This is a model of his home. This is the add-on. This is where the train room is and the storage room for the train collection. It was added on to an original house that was built in 1963 by his parents. He inherited it and then did this addition. The addition had to meet certain codes because this is a historical area, and these 1960 homes were done by a lot of young architects who were just beginning in their careers, and they tried to preserve the integrity of those designs. And in fact, his home was selected to be on by Rice University School of Architecture to be included in this year's home tour, which is 8 homes selected in the city for their architectural significance and how they were able to adapt current needs in additions. And it's going to be featured on that tour next weekend. Talk about cutting it close. The house took 2 years to build. The layout took 3,000 hours. Just kind of give you an idea of the time that was put into each of those projects. Here, a little bit further down the road in terms of the scenery. Now, in all the other pictures that you've seen previously, you saying, oh, that looks like just some open frames. This is the finish that goes around the table. This is all teak. It matches all the woodwork in the rest of his home. So these are bookshelves, display shelves. There's a train display shelf on one end. And again, this is all furniture grade teak, and all the work was done in the shop. And all these parts were done separately so that they can be attached to the layout as a perimeter piece. Again, just to show you the scope of the work and now in place. This is when we were doing test fitting. Oops, sorry, I jumped there. Test fitting, the cabinetry. These are magazine racks here. Okay, and all these processes are going on simultaneously. So you're seeing the entire process here, from bookcasing, basing, tabletop, to track, sample of the finishes, and still in process carving. That's one of my better sides there too, as I'm carving on the table. Here we're into paint finishes now. These are the base colors that are being laid in, and we're actually putting in. This is the muddy. I'm just kind of step back here. But the scenic artist is doing the different layers and colors of paint that's painted right onto the surface of the terracotta and goot that we use. You can see the difference in colors from one side of the table to the other. And again, always referencing what the client was looking for. You can see these colors in the rock, in the stream bed here. Now we're getting into more of the scenic. One of the things that I emphasize whenever I speak about what we do scenically is all the different layering, the colors of ballast, grasses, brush. It's a process that you keep building on, and the variety of colors. It's not one color of grass. You know, so oftentimes you'll buy, okay, there's grass, oh, a bottle of grass, I'm finished, right? Sprinkle grass on the surface. Multiple colors add more depth, more realism into the finish that you have. The ground here, you can see there's talus, there's gray, there's a dark gray, there's sand, there's a sand colored, there's actual sand, and a sand buff color. There's a rusty color, a charcoaly color, and then our ballast. Brennan's ballast is one of the best out there. It's really heavy in terms. It's real granite, but the color combination he's picked is awesome. And you can change the overall coloration by just tinting your glue. You use white glue. You know how you build up with white glue. Everybody knows, right? Okay. As you do your wet soaking of the ballast on any surface, if you add a little color to it, you can change the whole color of your finish. Okay, a little bit of tint, even just the regular latex paint, add it to the white glue, when you do your wet mixture of the basically 1/3 glue to 2/3 water. If you add a little bit of color, you can change the color of that ballast. But it has a nice, rich differentiation now in terms of the tints, the different granites that he uses. Really good stuff. So I put in a pitch for Dennis Brennan, and it's really nice stuff to work with. Again, showing you the detail of doing brassing. As a little bonus, I've got a video I'm going to show you right here at the end of me doing some mountain carving. In the next latest Toy Train review that Tom McComas has out. It's a fun little video. He kind of some tongue-in-cheek stuff, but some real quality elements in there as well. And he did a little snippet of me doing some carving. He came and photographed these or videotaped the layouts that we were working on. There's a follow-up video that's about to come out. It'll be available at York. It includes a little vignette of me doing the grassing and ground covers. But you can see the weeding, the grass, different colors of grass, richer greens closer to where water will be when you get some rain and runoff. The differentiation in the groundwork, you have real rocky surfaces, gravel off-running from the ballast that has slipped down. Areas where you have a different color ballast that may have been used on an earlier version of the layout. So those kind of elements all make your finish out a lot richer. Again, working from resource, right? Whenever we're doing finishes, colors, we're always referring back to our research. You can see where the colors of the cliffs is a little bit bluer. We're working with the real base colors here. And that's the effect of the light, time of day, that type of thing. But I think you'd have to agree that what's in that photograph looks a lot like what we have going on here. Now, remember back to those early pictures? That's the canyon. Now remember, all this comes apart. Right? You're looking at 8 feet by 8 feet here, 13 feet across from where the bridge starts and where the bridge ends. That all comes apart, goes through a hole in the floor that is smaller than this. Okay? This is 8 foot, we had 60 inches. Right at, or 6 feet. So all this breaks down and fits through that hole in the floor. Here you can see the current is painted into the river, the change of the transition of color, the sandbars, and then of course all the rock faces with all the streaking and toning that is in there. This is the control board for those electro fanatics out there. This drawer slides in underneath the table, so it's not in the walkway. And right here is where the computer laptop is to operate the LED light system that's in the room. And that's the other side of the board. This is the layout being disassembled. In the final steps, we'll be doing the last of the flame proofing on the raw wood. Again, all of the base is flame proof, fire retardant. You can see how things slice, come apart in sections, and that's my 30 inch, or actually it's 28 inches, so real close tolerance getting through that hole, and no more than 6 feet. This is actually 5 feet, 5 inches. Here's the valley with one side of it removed. And you can see all the finish work that's in there. All of these piers are removable as well. But thinking back at the photograph you saw earlier, a pretty good replication of the actual site. The Wharton Station actually had a giant 20-foot diameter Southern Pacific logo done in crushed seashells and coal. and we replicated that. The palm trees are the ones they imported from California and planted in Morton, Texas. There is a water tower in relationship to the station in Morton today, and there was back in the 1920s as well. The water tower came later. This is the actual installation in the room. Again, you can see where the pieces are being brought up and assembled from the end where the stairwell is into the room and the elevator, and we're building this way towards the hole in the floor. This is during the assembly. On the end where you come up the stairway, this is the display cabinet. It has lighting underneath there that the collection, part of this collection is placed. You can see where the joints are. When it's finished, they disappear. Another picture from another angle. This is the bed for the canyon. Again, the display cabinet. Again, it had be brought up in sections. It's 14 feet long in terms of the display surface, so this middle section is a drop-in piece that covers the seams. The canyon going in. This is the canyon pretty much in place as we're building the rest of the table. The key element in designing and building so that it can come apart is that if you ever decide to move, you've built a layout, what do you have to do? Cut it apart or take it apart?
We did that.
Right? You've done that, right? Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Well, when you do it in modular sections, it makes it a whole heck of a lot easier to move and reinstall.
Is there a standard height that you would recommend? I've noticed that, you have valleys, but I'm wondering about, 2-year-old kids climbing on it. And
Now, most of the tables we do that are in homes are typically at about 36 inches. It's a very comfortable height to work at. We do drop downs that are lower occasionally. We do tables that are higher occasionally, but 36 seems to be a norm, which actually, when you do mountains like these, it really tends to fill up a space. This is a hole in the floor. And you can see that we're right near the end. All the last pieces are being brought up. The floor panel goes in, and you have no idea how it got up there when you close it up and walk into the room. This is the 13-foot bridge being put into place. That's a view of all the cabinet work. You can see how we drop down for the canyon view, which is really spectacular. I'm going to start going through it pretty quick. Now we're into the finish in the room. The turntable in place. This is what you call a garden track. Many areas of the country, this is in Victoria, Texas. They actually have a roundhouse addition to this, but this is how they service a lot of the engines in an open yard like this. So we replicated that element for his display because he really wanted people to experience the trains not in a garage. You can see that we have through tracks here with surface going. When you have a 30-foot table, you can get some really nice runs of trains. Of course, we're backed up to the canyon here, the mountain cliffs. A really neat thing is the view box. So you walk up and you don't see the whole table. You see hills and features that you have to go around and appreciate the whole table. And again, his train gallery surrounded by paintings and photographs. Morton Station in place. With trains, passenger consists. This is the first home he lived in. He started collecting trains in 1948, and that's the home that he was brought home from the hospital. And we replicated that as a model as well. And this is the home, LED lights, But again, not one level of grass, it's multiple levels of grass, different trees. A lot of details that really enrich the finish and look to it.
Did you use forced perspective?
Not on the buildings at all.
How about this scenery? I mean, I saw some painting in the back there.
Painting in the back, not sure.
Just back one or two. Yeah, right. Oh, okay.
That's the mountain you
That's
saw.
the mountain.
That's what I'm saying about the view blocks. You can't see the whole table. There's elements there so that there's a surprise around the corner, which it makes a layout much more exciting. This is that logo in the park next to the station.